I'm Adam Pasquarella, and welcome to episode 18 of The Power of Bold. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this latest episode of The Power of Bold. I'm really pumped to share this latest episode with you. I spoke with Manoj Vasudevan, an entrepreneur and consultant in Singapore who has one distinct skill. He's an outstanding public speaker. He's so good that on August 26, 2017, Manoj became the 2017 Toastmasters International World Champion of Public Speaking. For those of you who don't know, Toastmasters International is the world's largest and most prestigious organization that helps individuals improve their public speaking skills. Ever since I studied at Penn Law School, I've joined several Toastmasters clubs, and I can honestly say that it is one of the best self-development organizations out there. You're able to practice public speaking and leadership skills in a judgment-free zone. After getting up there and speaking, you receive solid feedback from your peers and tips on how you can improve your delivery. If you haven't gone to a meeting, I'd recommend that you check one out. Anyway, Manoj won the most prestigious international public speaking tournament, beating out 30,000 participants in a 6-month competition and 9 other finalists in Vancouver. Beyond his public speaking talents, Manoj is the founder of Thought Expressions, which provides coaching to people who need help communicating with others. He is also an author, writing books like Mastering Leadership the Mousetrap Way and World Class Speaking in Action. I'm really excited to share our conversation with you. Manoj is a world-class talent, and he shares awesome tips in this interview, including the importance of seizing opportunities to speak, how improvised speeches likely aren't as improvised as you think, his self-described bridging technique, why testing out your speeches in front of small audiences is so vital, and the importance of body language when delivering a speech. Because public speaking is such a vital skill, no matter your career path, we can all learn from Manoj. Okay, without further ado, here's the interview. I'd like to welcome on Manoj Vasudevan to this episode of The Power of Bold. Manoj, many thanks for taking the time to appear on the podcast.
Happy to be here, Adam.
So the overall theme of this episode is public speaking, and there really isn't a better person to be speaking with than you. But before we get into your work with Toastmasters and how you became a world champion public speaker, I'd kind of like to have our listeners learn a little more about you and how you actually became a stellar public speaker. So from my understanding, you're a trained engineer, and you began working at PricewaterhouseCoopers as a young professional. And at PwC, you were receiving promotions, wage increases, things like this, yet you realized that you were hitting a wall. So can you tell our listeners about your experience at PwC and why you felt stuck?
You seem to know a lot about me. I don't know where you found this information. Yes, so I'm an engineer by profession, by training. Then I used to work for a couple of companies, and then I, of course, worked for PwC. PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it's a very large multinational company. I was in the management consulting side of the organization. And so it's a very competitive environment. So you need to really have the edge to be at top of the game in any management consulting. So that's where I realized, so if you want to go to the next level of the career, a lot of people told me I need to get an MBA. So I was considering getting an MBA. But eventually what I figured out was when I started observing people who really grow in their career, not just in the organization, but also in the various clients we work with, is that there are 5 core skills you need to master, which give you the edge. So the 5 core skills are an ability to connect, an ability to communicate, an ability to network, an ability to lead, and an ability to sell, as in to get people on your side, to influence, to raise your influence. So these 5 core skills, I notice people who have these 5 core skills really do well. And unless you master these 5 core skills, it doesn't matter what you master. because you always be operating under your true potential. So I was very curious to pick up these skills. So one of the things I did was I started my own consulting. It was like jumping in the deep end of the pool. And you probably read about me as well. My nature was shy, introvert, and reserved. You will not see me as the life of a party, right? So this was a stretch for me, but I realized this is what I need to master. So it's not the MBA, it's not the engineering, it's not the years of experience. This can definitely give an edge. Then more and life is such that once you focus on something, you see a lot of evidence for that. So I started getting several evidences, several information in terms of why this is so essential. So I started picking up these skills by interacting with people, being more aware of the importance of this, connecting with people. So networking, leading. So eventually public speaking was one of the last thing I wanted to attempt. But then I realized that's a magic bullet. So because you have you don't just influence, you have mass influence. When you there's a better use of your time. When you can get on stage and say the same thing, which you could say one-on-one, your influence it has a compound effect, right? So not only you speak, not only raise your profile, not only increase your influence, you get invited to speak somewhere else, and it multiplies. So that's my short story of my long journey.
So back when you're at PwC and say, for example, your boss says, oh, you have to give a presentation to a bunch of people. Right when you hear that news or that instruction, do you get really anxious or nervous? And how did you approach it before you joined Toastmasters and became a pro?
Oh, Toastmasters was much later. I used to give presentations before. So at PwC, probably I didn't get so much chances to do speaking because there's always been people who are already experienced in that act. But I have. So the challenge was not really speaking, it's just getting the opportunity to speak, to be invited to speak, to be seen. So what I realized later on, and now I advise people, you need to be seen as someone who can be invited to speak. Right?
And so how do you get to that point? Just becoming an expert or something like that?
So say that again.
So how do you get to that point where you're known as?
Okay, so I'll just touch point on the PwC a bit. So I have got an opportunity to speak, but not that long because I've not raised my profile as a speaker and people do not identify. And the one thing you don't do, to answer your question, one thing you don't do is tell people you're not a speaker. I'm not good. I'm nervous to speak. The moment you say I'm nervous to speak, nobody's going to invite you to speak.
Right.
And it's a very fundamental thing. Second thing is you need to seize opportunities to speak. In every organization, there are opportunity to speak, maybe addressing a town hall session or doing the presentation. Basically, I say raise your hand. When you see an opportunity, raise your hand and grab it. When you take that opportunity, you probably have no clue what you're going to do. Right? But just seize the opportunity, then you figure out a way to do it. So typically, even in schools, in colleges or universities or organizations, a lot of opportunity. What happens is people are so scared they won't even say yes. And honestly speaking, people who do say yes most likely do not know everything at that point. But they just seize the opportunity because then you figure out a way to do. Of course, there are techniques and strategies you can use to come up with a speech on the spot, and also habits and routines you have to build up your profile and story files and things you can bring it together to crafting a speech. But this critical first step is don't tell anyone you are afraid and seize the opportunity to speak.
Right. And so even if you are afraid, you kind of have to fake it till you make it, right? You have to put yourself out there, even though you may be an introvert, you may fear judgment, that sort of thing.
It's interesting because the introvert doesn't stop you from a speaker. In my view, introverts are the best public speakers.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Why do you think? I will ask you. Why would I say that?
Well, I was asking you, but to answer your question, maybe they prepare in a certain way more than extroverts. They're more methodical in their preparation and presentation.
That's one thing. But one thing is, I believe introverts think a lot. So it actually really helps to think and have empathy with the audience to understand what they want, and then you actually think and speak. or speak after you think, right? So
Right.
if you think think after you speak is a problem.
Yes.
so
Definitely.
so actually, since you are an introvert, you have, or since anyone who's an introvert listening to this, I would suggest that the ability to think through something really helps you. Because I have seen experiences. I was speaking in Australia. A lady comes to me and said, "Oh, my husband, he's such an extrovert, but he can't deliver the wedding speech. He's so scared." But then his brother, who's an introvert, speaks no one off stage, but on stage he's like the king.
Right.
So this is nothing to do with your speaking. I believe that ability to think through really helps you as a speaker.
Mm-hmm. But what about those moments where you're kind of put on the spot? I know in Toastmasters, we'll talk about Toastmasters in a little bit, but in Toastmasters, there are some situations where you're put on the spot, you're given a topic, and you have to speak right away.
Yeah.
So if you're an introvert, that advantage is kind of lost, right?
So it's nothing to do with the introversion. It's just the fear of speaking and a lack of awareness. So Mark Twain said, to deliver a great impromptu speech, you need 2 weeks of preparation.
Right.
So the idea is, of course, you do a lot of reading, you get comfortable on stages to prepare for that moment. But the key thing is there are structures you can follow to come up to answer those questions. First thing is try not to be perfect. So as I said, you didn't have 2 weeks of preparation, right? So you go there, you don't try to be perfect. And then there are structures you can follow to organize your thoughts. The key is to have structured conversations. So there are certain way you guide them through your thought process, and you have a speech. Now, very few people, or it's a minuscule, there's a very small number who can actually come and deliver a presidential address as an impromptu speech. It's impossible. Close to, I can't say impossible. There could be a rare few could do that. If you want to deliver a good speech, what we have is story files. So the way I am answering your question, I don't know what your questions are, right? And probably just I'm thinking through my thought process to come out with what I could say to justify your point.
Sure.
So the key is the work you do before the scene.
Yes.
As in going through the stories you have to share, going through the content you have, taking notes. So because whenever the opportunity comes to speak, you know what to say.
Yes. So you're almost saying like having stories on file, almost, or doing the legwork before.
Yeah. So so it's some people work differently. They don't write down stories, but one easy way to do that is to keep files of stories you like to tell. For example, you write a book, and in that book, so tell me about a book you read recently.
Right now, I'm reading Jim Cramer's book about how he became an investor. So this is from the 1990s.
So now you could use, and I don't know about this book, but now if you were to tell me a story from that book that really resonated with you and the lessons from that becomes a story.
Yes.
You can tell. More importantly, your story from your life, from attorney to what you're doing now, what triggered, that's a story. So now if you have a habit of like recording it some way or form, it becomes your story file. Right. So then it comes to your mind as you get exposed to audiences. You can see which stories connect with those audiences. Right.
Exactly.
So some way people cheat in this impromptu speaking, and if you watch politicians. So if you see a presidential debate, let's say in the US, or some kind of an interview situation, they are trained to answer questions. So they have answers no matter what the question is.
Right.
So whatever topic they go to, so this is what I call a bridging technique. So you come with a talk. So imagine I am preparing you for an interview, and you're going to meet the press, and the topic is Ask Adam Anything. Right? So now if you were to sit with me, what we will work out is a typical topics that covers your experience or domain on the current affairs. I will prepare you for some topics where you have like answers ready.
Exactly.
This is the 2 weeks of preparation, right? The one you have the answers ready.
Yeah.
So once you are hit with a question, in your mind, you find how you can bridge to the one of the answers you have.
Right. Yeah, it's like
So
in a presidential debate or something
yeah,
like that.
so yeah, this is how they look so cool.
Yeah. Right.
This is how they look so polished. And this is same for every president. I mean, a lot of them, right? So every politician or lot of these company leaders, they have ready-made stuff that can work. So this is just one strategy. There are several strategies.
Hmm. Right. Looking back into your history, your life, and having those stories ready, and then bridging them to the question at hand. That's pretty much what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so if I could, I'd like to actually ask you about just your Toastmasters experience in general. And my understanding is you joined around 2008, 2009, something like that.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to join Toastmasters in the first place?
Okay. So at some point, early 2000s, I started a habit of reading, and I was discussing. And at organizations I work or I consult, I've been having chats with the employees, and I'm helping them to like think big and do better stuff. Also coming from the books, the type of books I'm reading.
Hmm.
And then they said, "Why don't you speak?" I said, "No, speaking is not what I want to do." And I once met a lady who was very timid and shy. And then I met her 2 years later, or after a long period of time. And she looks very confident, and she's heading out for a meeting. So what meeting? It turns out to be Toastmasters. So that's how I heard the word Toastmasters first time. And then I Googled it. I went to a club in 2006. I see
Okay.
a lot of people in the club, as 80 people or something, and it's huge. And they invited me to do this impromptu speaking. I said, "No, I'm not doing it." And then I came back in 2007. Then I came back again in 2008. So, but I didn't feel like joining, because I just said, what am I getting into, right? Because I'm not used to that thing. So eventually in 2008 September, I joined the club, and because my wife said, "Make a decision. Why are you just going and why do something, right?" So eventually, but I took 8 months to deliver my first project. I was very cautious. So only in
Hmm.
2009 April I did my first speech.
Right.
And
And everyone joins. It's all about self-improvement for those that don't know about Toastmasters. It's a very positive environment. Everyone's very friendly. Yet there's still that anxiety or apprehension to go and deliver your speech. And like you said, it took you 8 months is that your icebreaker? It took you 8 months for
yeah,
your
this is my first project. Yes.
right.
So, but after my first project, I met a guy who told me about like a new record. He used to give me some feedback, record my speech. But what really accelerated my career from there to this was I started speaking outside the club. I
Mm.
only looked at Toastmasters as what's a way to a means. That not It's not an end in
Yes,
itself, right? So
exactly.
way towards an end, right? So I realized there are good things and things that doesn't work for me within Toastmasters, because I just want like fast results. I want to like do different things. So one few things I did was I did master of ceremonies. I just like offered to be a master of ceremony at a few events, which really put me in the spot.
Mm.
That kind of stretched me out of the comfort zone. I spent a year learning humor, like nitty gritty. So the end result was I was among the top 25 stand-up comedians at the International Comedy Festival, Hong Kong, by
Right.
2012. So it was not that. So then of course, somebody planted an idea in my mind to become the world champion of public speaking. When it was, I didn't even know what that was. And so that also got me into the contest circuit of competing. So that opened the idea of looking at speeches and see why one speech worked while the other one didn't work. And also I started looking from the audience's perspective. Why did they like one speech and why didn't they like another one? Which is a rarity, because if you watch TED Talks, there's no that kind of comparison except for the views. But it's also a struggle, because you need to fit the audience. You're forced to
Right.
change your views to fit the audience. So that was change in perspective that I had to go through to do the world championship. But in the meantime, I also started doing professional speaking.
Mm.
So professional speaking is when you're getting paid to speak. That's because I network with a lot of professional speakers who are like, these guys who are getting like $50,000, $60,000 for a speech. And I said, oh, you can get that. So I didn't know that, right? So I just got, what do you do to get this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
So that was a completely different world. So being a Toastmaster was one aspect of it, which really taught me the power of mentors, having a mentor, some power of getting feedback, then following through on those feedbacks, and also to know which feedback to take in, which feedback to reject, and then also following your true style. But then when I started speaking outside the club, I realized these audiences know nothing about public speaking. So their way they judge is different from Toastmasters. So I also understood that aspect of it. When I did stand-up comedy, I understood the importance of entertaining the audience before you educate them. But this sounds like preaching.
Right.
So then in professional speaking, I understood the nitty-gritty of how to look professional on the stage. So when I weaved everything together, my progress was much faster.
Wow, that's amazing. I have so many questions from what you said, but I actually like to go back to the stand-up comedy point, because I think a lot of people find that even scarier than just public speaking in general, just trying to make a room full of people laugh. And so how did you said you were an introvert. How did you find the courage to actually do that?
Yeah, interesting. So if you ask me in 2010, I would have said it is difficult. And now if you ask me in 2012 onwards, I said this is really easy. And I mean it. If you learn the technique, it's really easy. Of course, fear is one thing. The reason stand-up comedy, I say, is easy, there are specific techniques you can use to make people laugh. The second reason is people who come to listen to stand-up comedy are there to laugh.
Yes.
A lot of them are drunk because it
Right.
usually happens in a pub or something. So, they're primed to laugh. And also the setting is such a way that people are sitting together. The room is the context and of the room is set for prime for people to laugh. Now, what I did was from 2010 to 2011, or probably 2009 to 2010, I think, in that 1 year period, I spent a lot of time watching people making others laugh. Then I look at the techniques. I'm an engineer, so it helped. So I just deconstructed the techniques to see, hey, this is how it works. Then and also one thing you should remember about stand-up comedy is that a lot of the stand-up comedians, what they use, actually one of my friend who's a stand-up comedian is a friend of an American stand-up comedian, Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh yeah.
So Jerry Seinfeld. So what he said is Jerry has a line to glow in the dark. What it means is that this is what I was practicing, but from him, I heard the line, is that all these amazing stand-up comedians, they have no place to test new material. They can't come on the big show and test. So what they do, they go to a very small remote town where nobody knows you, and they test their jokes there. And what works, they keep. What doesn't work, they throw away. It's actually a cycle of keeping what works and throwing away what doesn't work. Eventually, when I come and deliver the stuff, you only see the best material.
Yes.
Which has been proved and tested and proven to work. So you go with a lot of confidence, this is going to work. If I say this line and pause here, you will laugh. So this kind of completely changes the odds in your favor.
Yeah, so you pretty much have to iterate, obviously. I've heard a similar thing that Chris Rock does. It was in this book called Little Bets, and he like you said, he goes to small comedy clubs, he tries out different jokes, some of them fail, a lot of them fail, and he figures out the best material, and then that's what you see on HBO or whatever primetime performance he's doing. And so iterating is a major part of not only comedy but public speaking. Is that right?
Yeah. So iterating is the second step. First step is observation.
Yes.
Observation is as in observing those ideas that can be developed. And I believe all the creative people in the world I have met, and of course I do leadership coaching, so I coach some of the top CEOs as well. So all the smartest people, creative people, have one habit, is note taking. They take notes. They don't just listen. So, and then they have a way of compiling these notes and making it, placing it somewhere was easy to access. And this is what comedians do. So I hang out with comedians. I don't do stand-up comedy since 2012 because I moved into professional speaking and other things I resonated with more. And when I go with them, they're always taking notes. So during the conversation, I say something funny. They say, wait a minute. Then they write it down. So this habit, with the second step of practicing and making it better, gives you the edge. Now you can see stand-up comedy is not that difficult.
Right. After you put in hours and hours of observation, you're really very methodical in the way that you learned how to speak outside of Toastmasters. And then eventually you tried to become the world's best speaker, the international world champion. And from my understanding, you participated in many events in 2012, 13, and on and on. But last year was the first year that you became the champion. Yeah. And so can you talk about that process a little bit? How you decided on the topic of your speech. And I'm going to link to the speech in the show notes. It's really terrific. Just your delivery, the content, everything was awesome. But can you just describe to our listeners how you came up with the speech and how you delivered it, how you came over any fears that you had?
So Toastmasters International conducts the World Championship of Public Speaking. This is considered the world's largest speaking contest. So 35,000 participants in 142 countries take part in the competition. And there are 6 levels of contest. And so you need to come with a 5 to 7 minute speech that has a higher chance of connecting with the audience. So maybe other way to put that is in 7 minutes, you need to connect with the audience, make them think, make them laugh, make them resonate with the message, and be inspired to take action. That's typically a speech that will work. So for me, I first competed, if I remember right, is 2010. So there are 6 levels of elimination in this contest. 6 levels. Level 1, so there are different names, but level 1, level 2, level 3, up to 6. So I reached level 4 in my first attempt. But that was because I had watched a lot of speakers and understood the nitty-gritty of it. But I didn't progress beyond that till 2013. And so I had competed 2011, I've competed 2012 and 2013. And I thought 2013 I will be the world champion because I was quite ready by that time. But when I went on stage in Cincinnati, my microphone didn't work. And I was very furious. I said, this large number of people. But then as I sat there, I was very disappointed. But when I sat there, one guy came to me and said, Manoj, somebody wants to meet you. I said, it's Cincinnati, who knows me, right? So there was a blind lady with a working dog. She walked to me and said, Manoj, your speech made such a difference to me. I felt like I was in a roller coaster ride with you. And I was like, in my speech, I had a prop which she didn't see. And still she connected. So then after that, I switched my thinking. It was a message for me to switch my thinking. It was not about winning. It was about looking at the people in the audience as they hear my message.
Yeah.
So I completely changed my perspective with thinking, what do these people want to hear now? Right? And how can I say it the best? And I also started thinking, this is my unique opportunity. How many people get a chance to address the whole world, right? So if you're given an opportunity to address the whole world, what can you say in 7 minutes? So this was my trigger point. So for my speech itself, most of my topics are aligned with what does the world want to hear now. So that's my starting point for my speeches.
And in the winning speech that you had, it's called Pull Less, Bend More. It's about your relationship with your wife. And it's a very vulnerable speech. You talk about internal conversations you had with your mother and your wife. And so when getting to that vulnerable point, like you did on stage in front of 2,500 people and tens of thousands streaming online, how do you find the confidence to do that?
Okay, so during that time, it was 2017, but since 2006, I've delivered something similar since 2015. And the reason is, when I look at the world, and there are a lot of friction, people in different groups, not only in politics or religion or society, the people are in different groups trying to fight with each other. So I said, if I get a chance to speak to the world, and what I would say is, guys, cool down, or chill out. This is not that bad. So in my instance, my final speech was in Vancouver. And if you look at the map, my flight from Singapore to Vancouver goes through over Japan, where it's right in between North Korea and America. And the hottest news of the time was the North Korea and America on tenterhooks. So I said, same thing, pull less, bend more. So my thought process of but in Toastmasters, you're not allowed to speak about politics, religion, or sex. And this can disqualify you. But I want to speak about that without mentioning it. So my whole idea was how to say it without saying it. And so I So, and as a speaker, one of the things you need to convince the audience is you need to build your authority as a speaker. So one way you put authority is being vulnerable and tell your story. Where did you learn that? How did it work for you? So that's why I went back to my life to pick a story where I could say it best. And then confidence-wise, what I also realized is I tend to do better with bigger audiences than smaller audiences. But in this case, it was extremely tough because it was the first time ever the contest is run at night. It was conducted in the evening. It's 8:30 to 10. So what happened is the people are sitting in the room all the way from morning, and a lot of them are tired, sleepy, and want to go to the restroom, right? So, because they're in the room for such a long time, because it's not hard to take breaks once you're inside the room. And I was trying to picture myself and say, how do I connect with them? How can I? So I was also looking back and saying, somebody in the audience have to hear this message. Somebody's going to appreciate this. So what I did 2 weeks prior to the speech was to test this in smaller audiences, like Glowing in the Dark, where I tested in audiences of size of 20 or so, especially in Canada and Singapore, and in India as well. And then by the time I was in Vancouver, I realized people are already resonating to this message. So I had pretty confidence this will work, because I've seen people crying, people like congratulating, people are like completely mesmerized. So I said, okay, good. But still, I could have done even better if it was on a morning, because the night people are like really sleepy.
Sure.
The speakers before me was trying to crack the best jokes, and audience was like, okay, because there's no energy left. So it wasn't particularly challenging for me. But so the confidence part, I was trying to switch my mind to see how can I add value to this audience. I don't know whether you look me up. I have an article written on Business Insider or CNBC, where I was featured alongside Warren Buffett. That's one of the articles says about the 3 milestones of public speaking. I said there are 3 milestones in public speaking. The first milestone is me, M-E. In that milestone, you're also focused on yourself. How do you do? Oh my God, will I do great? How will I think? Will I forget my speech? So all focused on you. That's where the fear is the most. The second milestone is message. Message is when you feel like you want to say something new, which nobody has ever said before. Still, you want to impress the audience, but also you want to look good. But there is a third stage. When you reach the third stage, you go beyond your fear and the need to impress the audience. And at this stage, you connect with the audience and you feel a lot more confident. This stage is called messenger. Messenger is you appear to the audience as a messenger because you've gone through life and the struggles you've gone through taught you some lessons, and you believe you learn the lessons, not because you're smart, but your struggles in life have taught you this. And you just come and share the message with the audience. And so I appear there as a messenger of sorts. So it's like, this is my message to the world. So then it's a better chance to be more courageous.
Right. And you're obviously adding more value too, because you're sending them.
We say when you're in service, there is no fear.
Right. Yeah. Right. Is there any way for people that want to be better at public speaking and they're starting at the me stage, what's the best or most efficient way to get to that messenger stage? Are there any tips that you have on that?
Okay. So I do have a website coming up. It's called nervoustofabulous.com, where I'm hosting a free course, a fundamental course in public speaking, where I go through these points. But the key thing is to believe that you can be a great speaker no matter where you start. I also add you can be a great leader no matter where you start. So I don't know whether you read my book. I have a book called Mastering Leadership, the Mousetrap Way.
Right.
In that, I'm talking all about how to be a leader if you're not born to lead. So some people are born by leaders by birth, others are leaders by design. This book is showing how to be a leader by design. So my belief is, and this I've proven with my clients. And so the idea is to first believe that you can be a fabulous speaker. Doesn't mean you will speak with the same accent as a president or the same style, but you will find your own voice and find your own style. So that realization, I am saying with a lot of confidence, because I've seen people transform right in front of my eyes. Even some of my live seminars, I bring people, like an audience of 1,000 people. I get a guy who is totally afraid to speak, give a coaching 2 minutes, and they will speak. All I'm doing in that 2 minutes, and they will speak, not just speak. I'll ask the audience to ask them any question and they will answer. The way I do that is to switch the little thing in the mind to unlock their block, believing that there's something special. So I kind of demystify this, and then I'll give them some simple structures to follow. Whatever the question is, you follow this structure. And so one of the structures I call it Oreo. Oreo is like, whatever the question is, so don't try to be perfect, right? Whatever question, don't try to be perfect. Perfection kills you, because you'll never be perfect. Because it means when you raise your standards very high, you probably never reach it and you feel you're not good enough. So the point is, Oreo is, you tell the opinion. Somebody asks you a question, you just tell the opinion, because it's not right or wrong, it's just your opinion, right? Second, you say reason. What's the reason of saying that? I say this because. Third is E is example or elaboration. Just say something to fill why you say that. What makes you say that? Where do you observe this? So this is where you go back to one of your stories and say one of your stories. Then the end say, that's why I said, and again, the closing, the opinion, O is also opinion. That's why I said this. So now it becomes structure. It's the beginning and end. There's some content in the middle. And since you're giving reason, there's some logic behind it. And if you can tell a story, there's emotion behind it. So you can speak. So the point is, of course, once I called a guy, I was speaking at the World Wealth Creation Conference. And there's Brian Tracy is one of the other speakers, a few other speakers as well. So I got a guy on stage. And so I asked the audience, ask any question. And some funny guy in the audience said, so what's the distance from the Earth to the moon? Right? So he said, Google it. Right? So, so the point is, once you try to give the perfect answer, you may fail. So then everybody laughed. Every audience was with you. Because the audience actually wants you to succeed.
Yeah.
We have this mentality. So getting out of the me stage is believe that audience actually want you to succeed. They don't want you to be perfect. They know this is a difficult thing you're doing, right? So then more and more you get used to that, you can grow in this life as a speaker.
And how does body language play an effect in this? Because there are studies, the famous Albert Moravian study where 55% of what you say is your body language, 38% is your tone of voice. And there are certain speakers, like if you look at Bill Clinton, the former president, he had the thumbs up when he was trying to make a point. He developed his own body language. So what are your tips on that?
So this research you quoted, the 55% body language, that's actually discredited.
Oh, is it?
But it's often quoted. So people, but there is a qualitative argument towards that is true. Body language plays a part, but because the research was done for something else. Bill Clinton, the reason he's a great speaker, if you look it up, is because as he grew up, he was used to conversing with people, dinner table conversation. Because his dad passed away and his uncles were taking care of him, and then they had this habit of speaking. So he is very good in eye contact. It comes naturally to him to look at someone in the eye and speak. So he focused a lot on connection. That comes to second nature. If you look at his history, he only lost 2 elections. Because he also is very good in networking. Right? He's amazing networker. So in the early times in his uni, he's still taking contacts of people down, writing it down, because he said, at some point, I'll call you for help. So he's a strategically well-positioned to get there. Now, body language, I believe, is something that we evolve. Even Bill Clinton evolved his body language. Initially, when he used to speak with pointing fingers at the audience and tell them what to do. Then eventually he started changing with the help of a coach. So one thing to do is you let your body speak naturally. So one of the 3 questions I ask initially, second question actually is, what's the proof? So you need to speak only on topics you really believe in. I'm not saying right or wrong, but it's something you really believe in. Then usually your body follows your words. When you are holding yourself back, it doesn't work. You show nervous gestures or something. Now, when your confidence increases, you reduce your pause fillers, you become more natural in your delivery. Now, the challenge is there will be some blind spots which you are not aware of. This is where you ask the audience or record your speech and review it to see what mistakes you are doing. Then you correct it over a period of time. So there's no right or wrong body language. It's like your preferred style, and you see where you're holding back. Typically, when I review speeches, I can tell from their gestures what they're thinking. This comes from experience. I can look at someone and from their body language, I can just say what you're thinking. Now I can look at you and say, you're worried about the time.
That's right. You're that's so right. You are. And so, like you were saying, if you are more comfortable with the content of the speech or what you're delivering, the body language will flow naturally. But what happens if you're, again, put on the spot with something and you become uncomfortable? How do you develop positive body language in that situation?
Okay. So one way, see, the reason behind body language is people are looking for congruency, like congruence, between the speech, what you say and what you look like, right? What you appear like. Now, the thing is, even if you're afraid, do not show any signs of fear. Now, so any repetitive gestures you avoid. So one of the first things I teach in my public speaking program is how to stand. Like there is a way to stand where you look steady all the time.
How do you do that?
Keeping your feet. So there's a way, actually, I can't demonstrate on audio, but it's actually you stand steady. And at one point, you should be able to sway in every direction without your feet coming off the floor or foot coming off the floor. So there is when you practice that, wherever you stand steady. So you don't have unnecessary movements. So people look, you are grounded, right? They will say you're grounded. Then, of course, the hands usually give away the signs of fear. So typically, if you are not trained on it, you have a tendency to hide the hands first. So you show your hands, it shows you're vulnerable, you're nothing to hide. It's body language perspective. So look at all the presidents. American presidents are a great example for, they're trained to speak. They always try to show their hands. And so if you show the palm of the hand, it's just so there's nothing to hide. So typically, if you're not aware of it, what people do is they hide it in the pocket or hide it behind the back, or they start playing it with the hair or dress accessories, as the case may be. So that's something to avoid. Okay. Yeah.
Well, as you saw from the video that we have, I am looking at the time. We're almost short on time here. Are there any books or literature that you recommend for people to improve their public speaking skills? Now, granted, I know the best way is to learn by actually doing it, but is there any literature out there?
So actually, what I have done is I've collected some tips, which is available on my website if you're interested. This is also coming from different books I read, and there's a summary of that. Of course, as you said, the best way is to actually do it. None of the books comes on top of my mind, but I would recommend people to watch TED Talks, where you get a lot of ideas and you also get inspired to speak more because you also have ideas that are valuable. And on my website, which is www.thoughtexpressions.com, you will see 52 prime speaking tips to persuade, resonate, inspire, mesmerize, and entertain. There's also a link to download a secret recipe of world-class entertainers. It's about the stand-up comedy and things like entertaining the audience. Not really stand-up comedy, entertaining the audience. So the point is, I would say, fall in love with public speaking, fall in love with the idea that you can be a leader, and there are proven ways for this. And if you're interested, you can look at my book also, www.themousetrapway.com. And even otherwise, just read. Have a habit of reading.
Yeah,
reading gives you a lot of content to speak, and listening to podcasts like this. You are spending your time doing this podcast. I appreciate that. There are several podcasts you can watch. It also gives you a lot of stories to speak about. Then eventually the idea is to get and see how others are doing, and find role models you resonate with, and you can actually model after them. That's easiest. The reason I said the book is that even I started writing a book called Nervous to Fabulous. Then I stopped publishing it is because I said nobody actually become a speaker by reading a book.
Right.
That's why I decided to have an online program or something. So the idea is this, you need to understand the importance. Then you look at the message, then you actually find the mechanics.
Yes, and then you observe the speakers you respect, and you kind of model yourself.
That's right.
Well, very good. So yeah, I'll link to your websites in the show notes, and also on social media. Do you have any Twitter handle or Facebook?
Yes, you can put it in the link then.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay, well, very good. Well, thank you, Manoj, so much. This was really, really interesting, and I wish you the best of luck with your business and future Toastmasters events.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Thanks for all the value you're providing to your listeners, and I hope to see your podcast in the top of the charts.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Manoj.
Thank you.
Once again, many thanks to Manoj Vasudevan for discussing his public speaking adventures on this episode of the podcast. He's a world champion for a reason, and I hope that you took away some insights that you can use in your next speech, whether you're giving a formal presentation at your job, or delivering a toast at a wedding or some other social event. The best way to learn public speaking is by doing, though, so make sure to get out there and practice, even if it isn't your favorite thing to do. That's it for this episode of The Power of Bold. Check out the show notes and transcript for this episode by visiting thepowerofbold.com. And feel free to follow us on social media by accessing The Power of Bold's Facebook and Twitter pages. Finally, as always, we'd appreciate if you can leave a review of the podcast on iTunes. Once again, thanks for listening to The Power of Bold. Until next time, take care.